But the long term is looking pretty bleak to me with some of this stories, because if it's just going to be a Lucas and Brad reunion, that will be some clear fast forward material to me, because if I wanted to see bad acting, I would go watch Tomas on Beyond the Gates. What is up, everybody? Here to talk about yesterday's episode of General Hospital as the good week of the show continues, although I do feel like we have ran the course on the last 4 episodes drama now that we do have a death in Marco, which I still don't love overall for the show, in my opinion. I know I've had a couple comments that they don't care about Marco, but I still contend that this show has so many different characters that I would have killed off before I killed off Marco, and I still feel 100% that way after the way this episode yesterday played out. But let's talk about the episode. We had Lulu still consoling Rocco, wanting to know what happened, but doesn't want to pressure him into telling her what happened. She just wants to help her son. She was saying that he doesn't have to deal with it on his own, even though he was having all these flashbacks about shooting Cullum. He doesn't know where to start because his mind is all jumbled about what happened at the pier. She asked him why he was at the pier in the first place, and Rocco was saying it was because he followed Britt. Rocco continued to detail the events of the struggle between Jason and Cullum, and then how Rocco picked up the gun and shot Cullum without thinking. It was just a natural reaction. He can't even remember why he pulled the trigger, just kind of remembered pulling the trigger. Lulu told him that she will take care of everything. She ended up taking him to the hospital to get stitches on his hand via Liz, with the excuse that Rocco cut his hand in the kitchen. So I guess at some point maybe that will be brought up again, how he was at the hospital getting stitches the day of Marco's death and also the day that Cullum was shot. Surgery was being done on Marco and Cullum at the beginning of this episode, with Isaiah working on Marco, but there was just too many stab wounds. They didn't even know about the third until he was losing too much blood. Meanwhile, Lucas was doing the surgery on Cullum and was successfully able to get the bullet out. So by that point, it was pretty clear that they were setting up the fact that Lucas saved the man that ended up killing his boyfriend Marco and stabbed Marco at the same time that Marco was dying. I mean, the setup is good here, and it gives us our shocking death, which is something that General Hospital loves to do. I think it's always a good decision in the short term, but the long term is looking pretty bleak to me with some of this stories, because if it's just going to be a Lucas and Brad reunion, that will be some clear fast forward material to me, because if I wanted to see bad acting, I would go watch Tomas on Beyond the Gates. So I don't really feel like seeing Brad's bad acting and having no chemistry whatsoever with Lucas. I do feel like that is what the show tried to set up last week, that there's going to be some future reunion for these two. Hard for me to care about that. I did enjoy Lucas's scenes in grieving Marco, though. Liz, of course, was the one that had to break the news to Lucas about Marco, that Marco is dead. Lucas went and talked to Marco's dead body. Liz had to tell him that he lost too much blood. They had been beating this drum for the last 2 weeks, so Marco's death was definitely being foreshadowed pretty highly because of how happy Lucas and Marco were going to be and planning the future and all of that. Lucas, of course, felt guilty for putting Marco in the dangerous position that he put Marco in, and it has led to Marco's death. Britt was still in the hospital being pissy with Portia because she was wanting to know how Marco was doing. Britt is saying that her life depended on updates on Marco and Cullum. Britt then remembered how Jason was telling her that she needs to say that he shot Cullum. So when Nathan came to question Britt and Portia stayed by her side, Britt was talking about how Jason shot Cullum because Jason was protecting him. Nathan, of course, was in on this. Nathan has been helping to get Rocco out of this. And so, yeah, Britt, I still don't like that so much of this was done for Britt. She's just not that girl. She'll never be that girl on this show. That is how I feel about the Britt character. And then just knowing how Britt and Lucas have that rivalry and Britt's best friends with Brad. I'm not looking forward to the Lucas and Brad reunion, in case you can't tell. So while the short term for the show actually had a really great week, the long term has some things coming that I'm going to want to fast forward. Just letting y'all know now for when I review those episodes. Alexis was still trying to get a hold of Danny, who ran off to talk to Charlotte. Charlotte's big idea was to go to Carly to see Valentine, to let them know that Jason is in danger. Danny and Charlotte told them about the WSB issuing a warrant for Jason, and they still thought Jason was a fugitive because the last time Danny saw Jason, he was headbutting Dante and running off. But Alexis called Danny to let him know that his father's been arrested, that Jason may have shot a high-ranking WSB official, the WSB director. So this, of course, was some shocking news to Carly and Valentine. When the kids left, Carly and Valentine were alone, trying to come up with a plan on how to get Jason to escape and maybe become a fugitive. Or when Jason is brought to Switzerland and found guilty, Valentine has some high-ranking WSB connections that maybe can help get Jason out there. And in the meantime, they have to prove that Cullum is a double agent. So we are still setting up that side of the story where Carly and Valentine are trying to save the day while also saving Valentine. But now they got to save Jason. This was a well-done way of writing Steve Burton out, who I guess is going on vacation. It's better than him being presumed dead for another time. So I like the creativity of how they are making Jason go away in this episode for his vacation, the actor's vacation. Dante was still with Jason to try and get him to talk about shooting a high-ranking WSB agent in the back. Nathan was also warning Jason how he needs to go through this carefully, or he's going to be spending the rest of his life in prison. But Jason was still not answering questions, and Dante was getting frustrated. He walked out to talk to the DA, Justine. Meanwhile, Nathan was still in the interrogation room with Jason, telling Jason that it's done. Dante and Justine were surprised by how sloppy Jason was being over this. And then Alexis arrived to be Jason's attorney for the day and also let him know about Marco being stabbed and how she and Danny had to find Marco in his office, in Alexis's office. Brennan and the rest of the WSB arrived to extradite Jason immediately, and we had a warning from Dante, which I don't know if anyone takes seriously, that if this isn't by the book, Dante will find out and make them pay. Of course, we had some proper goodbyes as Britt and Nathan arrived before Jason was being stuffed into the van by the WSB. This was so Britt and Jason can have a goodbye, and so Britt can tell him that she loves him. Danny and Charlotte also arrived for Danny to tell Jason that he loves him. Danny was having a fit as Jason was being driven away in the van. Dante and Nathan had to hold him back. They had a good goodbye. All of the younger actors are doing a really good job in this storyline. However, I will continue to say the whole kissing cousins aspect of Danny and Charlotte is still gross, and I'm going to bring it up every time because it is a major weakness in the younger set. Ava and Sidwell were in this episode at the start. I mean, good to see Ava. We definitely don't see her enough. It seems as though Ava is getting closer and closer to Sidwell. I don't know what her end game is here. There's usually something in it for Ava when she's up to something. I'm not exactly sure what that something is, but Ava talked about how when she's scared of something, she runs straight towards it, and how they both enjoy a challenge, and that led to a kiss. Ava was saying that she hopes this won't get him in trouble with Lucy. Sidwell said he and Lucy have an arrangement. Ava talked about how she doesn't like to share, but she's willing to play by the rules for now. But he will learn that she's more than enough woman. I mean, I'm always going to like Ava, so I enjoyed these scenes. I would like to see more of Ava and Sidwell's relationship thing, whatever it becomes. Chase ended up interrupting them, though, to tell Sidwell that Marco was stabbed. Isaiah was the person that worked on Marco, so he was feeling guilty about Marco's death. Portia had to console him. And then when Sidwell and Ava arrived, Sidwell seemed to blame Isaiah for Marco not making it, accusing Isaiah of botching the surgery on purpose to get back at him. I didn't see the beginning of Sidwell, so I don't really know what happened with him and Isaiah at the beginning. Maybe someone can explain it more to me in the comments, but I found that interesting. Then we had Sidwell crying about his son's death at his son's side, talking to Marco's body about how he did love him and how he's crying now, but his tears are no good for Marco now. He was telling Marco he can fulfill the promise he made to Marco to make Sonny suffer for Marco's mother's death. Once again, something else I didn't see. I did some research to see that Sonny was making Marco's mother leave town and she was a big alcoholic or something and drank herself to death. But it feels like Sidwell played a part in that too. Sidwell clearly can't take responsibility for his own actions, not only with Marco's mother's death, but now Marco's death. Of course, he just wants to get revenge on someone. So that was another very dramatic episode. I have enjoyed the last 4 episodes immensely. I think the momentum's going to start to wane, though, because we kind of got all we could out of this one day in Port Charles. And some of the aftermath, like with Marco's death and how that's probably going to lead Lucas and Brad to be close again, I am not looking forward to at all, like 0%. I do want to see what becomes of Sidwell versus Cullum in the future if Cullum does survive, which I think he will, and I think he should for storyline purposes. I don't know if Sidwell's grief for Marco made me feel like he's a more well-rounded villain, though. I still feel like Sidwell is a very much one-note villain, so that also does concern me. But, you know, putting him with Ava is a way for me to like the story more, but we need to see Ava more. I like the creativity in the way they wrote Jason off this time, and so a lot of good has come over these past 4 episodes, to say the least, even though some of the future long-term aftermath does concern me.